of the Men Talk Health channel. As always, I am the host, Jeff. As you can see, I have Scott back in for some more professional advice for us. Today's episode, we're going to talk about 5 reasons to see a professional therapist. The first one that you and I were talking about is coping skills. Why don't you kind of let us know, what coping skills are, how that helps us, on a daily basis.
Sure. Coping skills are tools you can use to help with your life, whether it be for your anxiety or your depression, whatever's going on. You can use those skills to, alleviate some of those issues you're having. You can learn those from the therapist. Therapists can give you suggestions. For instance, deep breathing for anxiety or depression, running for depression, that kind of thing, or exercise. And also, when you're talking in the session, you're talking about your feelings. That actually is a coping skill in and of itself, because you're letting out those feelings and you're expressing them, and that's helping you in that way. So you're just by going and participating and having good therapy, you are, utilizing coping skills.
Sure. Now, I recently saw a study that even talks about how writing can be, a coping skill for a lot of people. Because it kind of gets their feelings, almost like a daily journal. Have you, seen anything about, things along those lines?
Definitely.
Like doing that?
Definitely. There's many reasons. You're letting out your feelings, like letting things out. You're also, what I like about it is, if you're going back and looking at it, you're seeing patterns, you're seeing things about yourself, that are interesting. You're able to look back on things, and maybe you can learn from that. It makes it.
Okay, excellent. Now, the second topic that you and I were discussing is just overall health.
Yes.
In general. So, going to a therapist, how does that help us, with our overall health as well?
Right. So if you're holding things in, if you're not talking, if you're suppressing things, your emotions, your feelings, that's going to hold you back with your health. It's going to hold you back definitely with your cardiovascular health, and there's research that says that. So if you're letting things out, that's going to decrease your risk of heart problems, for instance.
Okay.
Among many things. That's my kind of my go-to is it's going to help you with your cardiovascular health, and it's going to benefit you that way.
See, and that's one of the things that I think that a lot of times we don't stop and think about. Is how it affects us physically. It's kind of like let's say you're running a marathon, and or you're just out for a run just in general, or a hike or anything, and you get a little pebble that's stuck in your shoe, and you keep that little pebble in your shoe throughout the entire day. Well, that starts to become a big issue, and it starts to to really hurt, and it really can stop an entire run or a race or anything that you may be doing. So I guess with talking about your feelings with a professional therapist, get it out early, to stop any, or to help prevent an issue physically for you as well.
Yeah.
Does that kind of sound like a good comparison there?
Definitely.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Now, and cardiovascular, when we talk about, how it affects us, cardiovascular, that's your lungs, that's your heart, so it can start to, you're saying that can start to weigh in and have an effect on those types of things as well?
Yeah, there is research on it that it can, affect you in a negative manner if you're holding things in.
Right.
So that can lead to problems,
Sure. Sure. No, and I can certainly understand that. And, a lot of times, when, for myself, like, I know when I get really bad anxiety or depression, I turn to food. And so, that becomes another issue that a lot of people tend to have on us physically as well. So, a lot of people use food as a coping mechanism. And I'm sure that's probably is that a common thing?
It's a very common thing.
Yeah.
It's a very common thing,
Yeah.
We could have a whole video about food as, not that I would necessarily be the expert in food as an addiction or food as, go-to, but, we can have a whole video on food, or just on escape behaviors.
Right.
That is a whole big thing, people escape going back to therapy is a way to address these issues as opposed to avoiding them, if that makes any sense.
I think he just signed himself up for another video, and that's what we're going to end up doing. So, and you're absolutely right. And coping, a lot of us turn to things that aren't healthy as far as coping things are concerned.
Yeah.
Food, as you know, is notorious. Alcohol, drugs, things along those lines as well. I don't want to get too sidetracked on this. I really wanted to kind of keep us at that, those 5 things. And so I know that the next thing that we've discussed is, how it affects our relationships, whether it's with, a significant other, or it's, maybe a sibling, a parent, even our coworkers, can be affected, by, how we're acting. So, of course, then going to a therapist helps with building those relationships and, making them better. Is that kind of the idea behind that?
Yeah, if it's good therapy, it's going to address that. You're talking to a person about somebody, and you're ironing out your thoughts regarding that relationship. So that can help you, give you tools to go back to that relationship and address them. Work on communication.
Okay.
You can also role play some of those kind of communication issues in the session with a good therapist.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's something that's very key. Is you mentioned about open communication. With people that you are in a relationship with, whether it's a personal relationship or a professional relationship. That communication is very important. And that's kind of what you talk about. Is during a session you say, hey, these are the things from a professional standpoint. You say, okay, maybe here's a way that you can approach it, or maybe this is what this person, is responding, why they're responding that way. Is that kind of how that ends up going?
That summarizes pretty well,
Yeah. So, and that's the idea, is really, again, it's just kind of opening up and talking about these things. It's not uncommon at all for, people to have, difficulties in their relationship, their personal or their professional relationship. But it's important to know how to get past that difficult point. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. Is, you talk to them on how to get past that hump, so to speak.
Right.
That difficult part.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's funny because that actually kind of ties into the 4th option, where we talk about self-awareness. And so self-awareness, if I'm kind of understanding or using the general definition, is really just kind of understanding yourself a little bit better. And so, what it is that maybe you as an individual do that contributes to your daily interactions with people and how you're feeling. Is that, so talk to us a little bit about, the self-awareness and how that, going and seeing a professional helps us with those things.
The therapist is going to help you. A good therapist is going to help you with that, because he or she's going to repeat back what you're saying, or they're going to tell you, they're going to give you, some feedback on what they see over time as they get to know you. If that makes any sense, right?
Okay.
And the other thing is, hopefully you're going to be talking in your sessions. You're going to be hearing yourself talk. I think I mentioned it before. You're going to be, taking input, taking note of what you're saying. So you're going to be, putting thought into what you're saying. You're going to be getting, some insight into, how you feel just by the questions the therapist asks you. You're going to learn from that. If that makes sense.
Sure. And so, in a sense, going to a therapist is kind of like a soundboard where you're, you're bouncing, you're putting something out there, and what comes back is your information plus a little bit of, suggestion or guidance, on, or maybe a different, mindset and perspective of that situation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And again, like we had talked about in our first video, is, you're unbiased as a professional when you're giving out this, this information. You're unbiased, and that I think is something that, for myself, going to, a therapist was always so reassuring. that my therapist doesn't have, a horse in a race, so to speak, doesn't have any reason to choose that you head one particular direction or the other than for myself, and kind of making sure that, I feel better about the situation.
Right.
And, with a self-awareness, you really kind of start to get a better understanding of who you are, and you kind of get an idea as to, what your triggers are. Like for myself,
Yeah.
I start to get an idea as to what my triggers are for my anxiety, and I start to now see if my anxiety goes on for a long period of time. I can also start to see when my depression's going to really start to come in, because you really start to kind of get a better understanding of your own feelings. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And that to me, just, that in of itself, I think the self-awareness is probably my most favorite thing out of it, because it for me, self-awareness ties into everything else the way that I see it. It ties into your relationships, it ties into your health, and into the coping skills, and then into the next the next subject that we were going to talk about, is how we were talking about, where it's neutral. Your information is neutral with that.
Yeah, and you touched on it. Not the therapist not having a horse in the race. I like that comparison. They're not supposed to really judge you. They're not supposed to really, they're giving you feedback. They're not supposed to really, make decisions for you.
Right.
They're kind of the sounding board, like you said, and they're giving you feedback. So, they'll tell you if they're concerned about certain things and that kind of thing, and tell if you're in danger.
Right.
But generally speaking, they're just there to, obviously listen, give you feedback, and tell give them your perspective, but not really blur any boundaries, go past any boundaries in doing that. If that makes sense.
Right. No, it does, and one of the things that that you brought up is not being judgmental.
Yeah.
That's something that I noticed very early on, and still even after over a year of going to a therapist, I don't feel that I feel as though no matter what I talk about, or no matter what language I use, or anything along those lines, I have never felt judged.
Awesome.
And that to me is a great feeling of knowing that I can give out information that is very personal to myself, where I'm not being judged, and the information I'm getting is not biased.
Right.
And so, it really just, it gives you an overall, kind of a good, warm sensation, a warm feeling, about being able to talk about, feelings and emotions. And, one of the things that I said in one of my early videos is, talking about these, talking about mental health just in general isn't something you have to do with a complete stranger. It's not something you do with a bartender or barber, or, you don't have to create a YouTube channel to talk about, your feelings and emotions. But the idea is to just be able to be open to the discussion, and the possibility of speaking with, someone in that regard.
Sure.
Now, is there anything else that, you'd like to, because we've talked about, coping skills, we talked about, our mental and physical health. The third one that we had discussed is relationships. Self-awareness was our fourth, and that one's my personal favorite. And then also the fact that it's neutral and unbiased, information. Is there anything else that you can think of that, we should, maybe like a bonus one, that maybe we should know, or my viewers should know, is something to expect, or a reason to do it?
A reason to do it. I mean, I just go back to, it's going to, I think it's, and I'm probably biased because I'm a therapist, but
right.
it's going to, it should make your life better, if it makes any sense.
Yeah.
you are and the therapist is good, if you're putting your heart into it or whatever, if you're not just going through the motions, it's going to net good results. It's going to you're going to see all those areas we talked about. They should improve.
Right.
And you're applying what you're learning. Those kind of things. So I just try to point home that it can be helpful if you put your effort into it.
Sure. And I think that one of the things to know is, for myself, and maybe there's a lot of other people out there that you'll feel better after the first session,
yeah.
but you're not going to always have an epiphany, or
Right.
you're not always going to have the answer to your life's issues or the
Yeah.
things that are going on just from one session. So you may need to go back multiple times. Sometimes you maybe have to go back once a week, or if it's really bad, twice a week, or maybe some people need it just once a month, or once every so often. I guess it's really just up to you to decide what works out best for you.
Yeah.
What works out best for you financially, what works out best for you, with your coping and trying to, to get past those things. Do you feel as though it is something you should do, for a long period of time?
I do want to add. Sometimes people have to. Therapy is a part of the toolbox. So sometimes people have to go to therapy and see a psychiatrist for medications.
Sure.
Where they have to see their doctors for medical issues. So therapy is a part of is a big part of the puzzle, but sometimes it's not all of it.
Sure. Medication is common. It's not something that is always frowned upon.
Right.
If you have to be prescribed medication for things, because of course there are chemical imbalances, in our bodies that those can help out and check out with.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I do certainly appreciate you coming today to record this video. And again, folks, it's a recap. The 5 reasons are coping skills, health, your overall physical and mental health, relationships with significant others or coworkers, friends, and family, self-awareness, which, as I said, is my personal favorite, and also, the fact that it's neutral and unbiased information that you're getting. Excellent. Well, thanks, Scott. I certainly appreciate your time today.
No problem.
And I look forward to speaking with you again in the near future.
All right, cool.
All right, excellent. Thanks very much. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below. Give me feedback. Tell me, what are some of the things that maybe you found as one of the top reasons that you like to go see a professional? Leave that comment down below. I'd certainly like to be able to hear it. And, make sure to give my my co-host here a round of applause. He did a great job for me today. I certainly appreciate him having him on. And up until the next time, we'll see you guys soon. Have a great day and take care.